Here be dragons, folks, as it is time to kick off the Fizban's Treasury of Dragons coverage. My name is Ted, welcome to Nerd Immersion. It officially came out on the 26th of October, which is today, which means it's available on D&D Beyond. We're going to start going through it. A ton of videos to cover in here, as pretty much the entirety of this book is new and there's a lot of really interesting stuff. Before we dive in, I did want to say, hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you like this kind of coverage, news, story time, any kind of other D&D related content that I put out here on the channel, consider subscribing. You can see that number right there, says 84,000. That's amazing. I was hoping to hit 100,000 by PAX Unplugged in December. I think that's unreasonable, but I guess we'll see what happens. Also, stay tuned to the channel and my social medias, as once I go and pick up my 2 limited edition cover copies of Fizban's from my local game store, I will be giving away 3 copies, 2 limited edition and 1 standard edition copy. So those are free and they'll be available to anyone. Giveaway to come in the next couple of days. So that being said, we're going to start off with the Dragonborn. This is the new Draconic races. There are 3, Chromatic, Gem, and Metallic. This was released originally as part of the Draconic Options Unearthed Arcana, and they I guess they pretty much arrived in Fizban's in the final published form, more or less unchanged. There are a few adjustments, so let's talk about them. So here you can see one thing that I think is I don't particularly enjoy, it's kind of a throwaway line here, is this bit right here. The Dragonborn race in the player's handbook is the most direct way to reflect a character with dragons somewhere far back in their ancestry. But for players who want to try a more nuanced approach, this section offers 3 variant Draconic or Dragonborn race options that can be used to create a character with clear connections to specific Draconic ancestry. That's just a way of saying, we screwed up the Dragonborn, and it was really weak, so we made a new one, but we don't want to go back and alter our existing one, so we'll say that it's less nuanced. Let me ask you a question. When you've played with Dragonborns in any of your game, have they been like, no, I really want to play an orange, brownish colored, modeled scale Dragonborn with no clear lineage or color, combination of scales? Or did you people at your table say, I'm going to play a red Dragonborn, I'm going to play a blue Dragonborn, a black Dragonborn, a silver, copper, whatever? In my experience, every single person that I've played with who has played a Dragonborn specifically chose a certain color Dragonborn, which apparently would make them be more nuanced, so they should have been playing these Fizban's races, but they didn't exist at the time. Essentially, there is absolutely no reason to play the player's handbook version of the Dragonborn, because the 3 that are listed here provide you everything that one can, and then some. There's a slight difference in the way the breath weapon works, in that it does differing amounts of damage and is once per short rest, but it is still your action to do so, whereas these Dragonborn can replace an attack. It's just better all around. There is a couple of standard things that will start off with the creating your character piece. This is the sort of new updated way races function now post Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Ability score increases. I know this bothers a lot of people. I have no issues with it at all. We do not have a set of ability score improvements for Chromatic, Gem, or Metallic Dragonborn. They are just what they are. You can choose any of them that you want, either +2 to 1 ability score, +1 to another, or +1 to 3 ability scores. A lot of people say they wish they would give us suggested ability score improvements. The reason they're not doing that is it's literally saving space in the book, and I don't think it's a huge deal. Apparently it bothers a lot of people. It is what it is. You're entitled to whatever opinion you'd like. Languages is common in another language of your choice. Probably going to be Draconic would be my guess, but it's up to you. And then there's a little bit here about creature type. It's not really relevant, as all of the new Dragonborns are considered to be humanoid, but that's there to reference things like we've seen where there are new Fey races, and again, the newest Unearthed Arcana provided a bunch of different other options for races. So let's start off as we scroll down with the Chromatic Dragonborn. I do want to say the art for these is fantastic. I love this art. I think it looks really, really cool. I've never really had any interest in playing a red Dragonborn, but this art gives me second thoughts. The other thing is standard across the board for all of these to help speed up the course of the video. They're all going to be humanoid. They're all going to be medium size. They're all going to have a walking speed of 30 feet. They are also all going to have an X ancestry, chromatic ancestry, gem ancestry, or metallic ancestry. This is basically picking the type of dragon that you're going to be, and that's going to affect several things. So if you pick a red Dragonborn, it's going to give you resistance to fire damage and a fire-based breath weapon. If you choose a silver Dragonborn, it's going to be resistance to cold damage and a cold damage breath weapon. So you get the point. But anyway, chromatic ancestry. So we have the resistance to whatever type you choose, and you have a breath weapon as a chromatic Dragonborn. You can replace one of your actions with this if you have multiple attacks. And then for the chromatic Dragonborn, it is a 30-foot line, 5 feet wide. They're all dexterity saving throws based off of your Constitution modifier. The only difference that we saw between the Unearthed Arcana is in the Unearthed Arcana, it used to do 2d8 damage initially, scaling at cantrip scaling levels to 3d8, 4d8, and eventually 5d8 at level 17. They ratcheted it back to a d10, and then a d10 that, again, scales on cantrip scaling levels, 2d10 at 5, 3d10 at 11, 4d10 at 17. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think they should have kept it at 2d8? Do you prefer this 1d10? Remember, this is essentially a cantrip, but it's limited in its use. It is proficiency bonus times per long rest, whereas a cantrip is unlimited. So but cantrips typically, with the exception of a handful, aren't usually longer range AoE, whereas this is a 30-foot long line and can hit anybody within that line. I feel like in my mind, the 2d8 damage at the start, and because it's hard limited by proficiency bonus, there's not really any way to change that other than getting a long rest. There's one magic item in the game that gives you a bonus to proficiency bonus, and it's legendary, so there's really not a ton of ways to alter that. To me, the 2d8 for the limited use you'd have of it made sense. I probably would have kept it that way. I guess maybe in playtest they said otherwise. You'll have Draconic Resistance, again, which is the resistance to the damage type that matches your breath weapon. And then you also have Chromatic Warding. All of these sort of extra abilities here that start at 5th level, in the Unearthed Arcana started at 3rd. They updated them to start at 5th, which is as an action, for 1 minute you become immune to the damage type associated with your chromatic ancestry, and this is once per long rest. I could have sworn it was longer. I'm actually going to go and look it up because I didn't think about that when I originally recorded this video, and then it didn't take. Yeah, okay, I was right. It used to start at 3rd level and last for 10 minutes. This now starts at 5th level and only lasts for a minute. I probably would have kept it. I'm okay with updating it to starting at 5th level. I probably would have kept it at 10 minutes, as I don't feel like the scenario, I mean, it happens frequently, right? You get immunity to the damage type of your chromatic ancestry, right? You're going to go fight a red dragon, you could be flat out immune to fire damage. So that's something nice, but again, it's an action to do so, so you're essentially losing most of your turn to use this immunity. If it was 10 minutes, that's something you could prep ahead of combat and make use of it. It also would, in my mind, lasting 10 minutes, could be useful for non-combat scenarios when you are out adventuring and exploring in the world. If you needed to run across a lava pool or something, you could be immune and you'd have 10 minutes to do so. I think the 10-minute time frame was fine. I'm okay with updating to 5th level. And then again, here's the different ancestries you can choose. We move on to Gem Dragonborn. I used to really, really like the Gem Dragonborn art, but to me they now seem very cartoony and goofy compared to how badass and terrifying the Chromatic Dragon looks. Now maybe that's by design, it's the sort of evil Dragonborn, so it has this more intimidating presence, but just the art style alone here looks really rough and tumble, and these guys kind of look like a goofy cartoon character, salamanders, but whatever. We already covered the same things. So they have a breath weapon as well. However, theirs is going to be a 15-foot cone as opposed to a 30-foot line. So not as long, but more potentially grouped up enemies. Same thing, the damage type scales accordingly. You'll have Draconic Resistance. Reminder that the Gem Dragonborn have a lot rarer types of damage, including Force Radiant, Psychic, Thunder, and Necrotic. Those 5 different damage types are some of the least resisted damage types in the game. So if you are basing this purely on min-max purposes for a type of damage that folks will not have resistance to or immunity to, I would say probably Radiant, Psychic, or Force are least resisted overall. Force might be the most. There's a couple of things that are immune to Force, but not very many. You also get something that you get a little bit extra, something above and beyond what the other creatures get, which is Psionic Mind, which is you can send telepathic messages to any creature within 30 feet. They don't need to share a language for them to understand the message, but they need to be able to understand at least a language to comprehend them. They also do not get to send messages back. This is a one-way communication. And then at 5th level, you get Gem Flight as a bonus action. You can manifest Spectral Wings. They last for a minute, and you get a fly speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. That is once per long rest. I don't know if I said that with the Chromatic Dragonborn, but it is also once per long rest. So your 5th level ability is a 1 time per long rest. Your breath weapon is proficiency bonus times per long rest. And then the Gem Dragonborn gets a little something extra in having the Psionic Mind ability. And then lastly, we have the Metallic Dragonborn. Again, all of the things we just discussed. They also have a breath weapon that is a cone-based, so that's that. Draconic Resistance, and then their 5th level ability is Metallic Breath Weapon. For those of you unaware, Metallic Dragons have 2 different breath weapons. If you just say look in the monster manual, they have a sort of damaging one, which is replicated in the regular breath weapon, and then they usually have some sort of CC or crowd control breath weapon. It differs for each dragon, but for the Metallic Dragonborn, it is also a 15-foot cone, and the type of DC depends on the breath, and you can choose it when you use the breath weapon, and it is again once per long rest. You can do an enervating breath, which is they must make a constitution saving throw or become incapacitated until the start of your next turn, or a repulsion breath, which is a strength saving throw or be pushed 20 feet back and be knocked prone. I just want to make sure that nothing changed on that. Incapacitated until the start of your next turn. Okay, so that's pretty much the same. Also, look at the Metallic Dragonborn art. This, in my mind, falls in line with what we saw with the Chromatic Dragonborn, and this one actually looks the most terrifying. It says a Copper Dragonborn readies her acidic breath as foes approach. This thing looks some sort of like crazy feral Dragonborn. I want to say barbarian. I don't think that's the case, but like they're like wild and nutty, and I think that this falls more in line with the art style of the Chromatic Dragonborn compared to the sort of, like I said, goofy salamander quality of the Gem Dragonborn. But there you go, folks. That is all of the new Draconic races contained within Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Like I said, more or less unchanged from the Unearthed Arcana. We saw a slight change in the level of the extra ability and the damage gone from 2d8 at the start down to a d10. Let me know your thoughts. Would you actually consider playing a Dragonborn now? In my mind, and I've illustrated this in the past, that the Player's Handbook Dragonborn, in my mind, has been largely unplayable by comparison. If you're looking at something like an elf or a tiefling versus a Dragonborn, they clearly, and even all of the newer races as well, have significantly improved abilities, whereas the Dragonborn always sort of fell short. And all it got you was basically Draconic as a language, a resistance to a damage type, and then a breath weapon that you could do once a short rest. Whereas now, with these new Dragonborns, you'll get the resistance, you'll get the breath weapon, which can be replaced with an attack and is multiple times per long rest, as well as the extra ability. And if you go Gem Dragonborn, you also get the Psionic ability as well. So yeah, I don't have any new characters that I'm planning at the moment, but I do think that this can now be added into the rotation as potentially something we can use. So stay tuned to the channel. Coming up next, I will be covering the subclass options. We have the new Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk, which unfortunately received devastating, in my mind, nerfs in comparison to its Unearthed Arcana version, and the Drake Warden Ranger, which received pretty much nothing but buffs from its Unearthed Arcana formula or appearance. And then we'll be doing things like the Draconic Feats. We'll cover the new spells, the magic items, and so on. So there's going to be a bunch of Fizban's content. So if you enjoy looking at my face and you like hearing me talk about dragons, there's a lot here coming for you in the near future. So I would say you could turn your notification bell on here on YouTube, but what a lot of my viewers and fans have said is that actually joining my Discord, because we have an automatic update there whenever I upload a new video, they've actually said that the Discord notifications of when a new video drops is more accurate and seems to be more noticeable than the YouTube bell notification. So you can choose to do that with you wish. There's a link for the Discord in the description down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.